Hello, and welcome to the A-level history presentation evening. I want to talk to you a little bit about why you should study history, and particularly why you study it with us at JCG. So why should we study history? Well, history is an incredibly relevant subject. It gives us the context to absolutely everything that's going on in the world today. Whether you're trying to understand the backdrop to Ukraine's complex relationship with Russia, whether you're trying to understand what's going on with protests around the hijab in Iran with women, whether you're trying to understand the backdrop to Black Lives Matters, or whether you're trying to understand the political leadership contests that are going on in the UK, you need to study history. One of the things that it does us is it really helps us to understand the world as it is currently, rather than the world we wish it would be. And we see the world really divided by people who want to create the world in the image that they want it to be, and they want to only see it through the lens that they already believe in. And history teaches us to view it as it is, not to accept it passively, not to think that there's nothing we can do about it, not to be fatalistic. In fact, quite the opposite. By studying history, we can learn how to shape the future. We can learn what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked, what the consequences of things have been. And we can use that to try and to help us shape the future better. History is a subject like few others at A-level, in the sense that it is so multidisciplinary. We really do study the whole gamut. It's not just studying events of the past, of course. It's studying events in politics in the past. It's studying events around economics in the past. It's studying social change in the past. It's studying foreign policies and wars and revolutions. It's about studying inequality. It's about studying all the things that we're interested in the world today, with all their complex and nuanced kind of ideas, but just studying them in history in the past and in the broad range. So history is obviously a hugely valuable subject to study. How will it help you? Well, it gives you a huge number of skills, things that are valuable for life, for university, and for the workplace. So regardless of what you're going to do in the future, you're likely to be in a job that requires a high number of skills, and things that people really value these days are the ability to take information and to read it critically, whether you're thinking about journalism, law, business, finance, medicine, the ability to read widely and deeply, and to really think critically about what you're reading, to use evidence to justify it, to consider, why you should invest in a company, or whether or not somebody is telling you the truth, whether or not that person is basing what they are advising you on with good evidence, is something that such a wide range of careers and personal situations really involve. It gives us the ability not just to read, but to listen to other people. In class, we do a lot of discussion work. We really think about the things that are being said by other people, the evidence they based it on. We learn how to support their ideas, to build on them, to encourage them, but also how to disagree with them, and disagree with them respectfully, which is a real skill that the 21st century seems to be struggling with in its online and real world life. Ultimately, we learn how to create robust, persuasive arguments. And so many careers rely on the ability of people to actually be able to persuade others, that history is such a good grounding for that. At university, obviously, whichever disciplines you study, and we'd hope you'd consider studying history beyond A-level, require you to do independent study, much greater than A-level. And history is a subject that really promotes independent research and study, and so gives you a great grounding for the future. We also see so many of our students do so well A-level, at least partially because they have enjoyed their study of history for 2 years. Not going to we write essays and we have to do exams and we prepare for those, but between those moments, in preparation for those, there is a huge amount of just immersing ourselves in the subject, of looking at the people, their ideas, their beliefs, how they interacted with one another, how their world affected them and how they affected their world. So it offers you huge opportunities to read beyond and widely beyond the syllabus, to develop the skills you need to read not just about the A-level topics, but to be much more sort of aware and interested in much wider events, which you can pursue as lifelong learning and lifelong passions. And we know that many of our students enjoy history and have enjoyed it for 2 years, as we have lots of students who choose to go on and read history or related disciplines, politics, international relations, PPE, at university. So if you chose to study with us for the next 2 years, what sort of things would you be studying? Well, it's a three-part course, there's 3 topics. We studied the Tudors, 1485 to 1603, Russia, 1917 to 1953, and a British unit which is called an NEA, or coursework, non-examined assessment. All of this is assessed in year 13, so year 12 gives you an opportunity to find your feet at A-level and to really broaden your ideas and your horizons on this. So when we study the Tudors, we're seeing a real extension of the work you've done on Elizabeth at GCSE, both in depth and breadth. So we studied the whole of the Tudors, 118 years of history. We start with Henry VII, a man who built the dynasty out of the Wars of the Roses. It took a very weak claim to the throne, and through smart alliances, brutality, building wealth, managed to create one of the more kind of, sort of stable and prosperous dynasties that England has had, or at least he gave the potential for that, the building blocks. Bit of a roller coaster under his son, Henry VIII, religiously, politically, economically, and then wars with Europe. So we study a great deal of Henry. We obviously study his wives and understand a bit more about why the divorces happened and what the consequences of those divorces were. We look at the religious changes, the foundation of the Anglican Church, and some of the conflicts that Elizabeth later had to resolve. We look at his children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. Edward and Mary, in the mid-Tudor crisis, we explore the rebellions, the economic collapse, the disastrous wars, and marriages that characterise this period, although we do question whether or not it's fair to judge them so harshly. And then we finish with Elizabeth, which is familiar ground. You've forgotten enough of it from GCSE for it to be fresh, but remember enough for it to be reassuring at the end of 2 years of study. Something completely new to you, though, we study Russia in the 20th century, between 1917 and 1953. So we study the collapse of Tsarism, the monarchy that had ruled Russia for 300 years, the rise of the Bolsheviks under Lenin, the revolutions that followed, the civil war that killed around 10 million people. So, more deaths in this period in that 3 years than occurred for Russia during the First World War. And we look at the ideology of communism, both what it is in theory and how it emerged in practice in Russia. We also study the rise of Stalin, and it comes to dominate, along with Hitler, the 20th century, certainly the mid-20th century. We look at how he rose to power, his relationships with other countries, particularly including China and Germany, and how the legacies of communism still, remain in China, which is obviously a communist country today. We look at economics and terror economics, about how slave populations, gulags, repression and horror, fear and terror are able to sustain a nation, and the extent to which those are justifiable methods if they lead to victory in the war. And we have really interesting discussions and debates about the morality of events in history too. And then we finish with a topic of sort of fighting for communism, in essence, about the events of World War II, Hitler, building on the work at GCSE from where we finished with the Nazi-Soviet Pact. We find out a bit more about how that happened, about how Stalin eventually defeated Hitler, and the extent to which to do so they had to sacrifice the principles of communism. And we finished with a look at the Cold War events in Korea and Berlin in Germany and Eastern Europe. There. So hopefully an interesting and fascinating period of history to study, with major ramifications, obviously, for today with what's happening currently. Alongside this, we do a piece of work worth 20%, a piece of coursework or NEA, non-examined assessment, particularly focusing on changes in democracy in Britain in the late 19th and early 20th century. Focusing a lot on women and women's suffrage and the changes around suffragists and suffragettes, but also looking at how men gained the vote prior to that, both middle class and working class men, with groups such as the Chartists also protesting for the vote. And we look as a sort of the theme about how successful popular protest is, how popular pressure can persuade governments or hinder sometimes developments in democracy, and that leads to some really interesting reflections among students on events going on today, whether they be climate change, women's rights, racial equality, etc. It really challenges our students to think about some of the preconceptions they may have about how to gain change. So if you do study it with us, how would you fare? Well, we've got a graph about the number of students gaining A stars and A's, which you can see is extremely high, well above the already high JCG average. The last set of exams we had, which were not CAGs, the real exams that students sat, you can see we did phenomenally well, with half our students gaining A stars, over 3/4 of our students gaining A star and A, and everyone achieving A star to B. But the little thermometer on the right just tells you a little bit about value added, how well each student does compared to their starting points. So as a school, we use something called ALPS, which represents progress from GCSE. So it takes everyone's starting point and measures their progress from there. And you can see that from there, we were in the top 1% of departments nationally, something we're incredibly proud of. It comes with a lot of hard work from the teachers, a lot of support, and an equal amount of hard work and commitment from the students as well. But it's a good reminder that effort really pays off, and all that hard work is worth it. Will there be opportunities for trips and enrichment? Yeah, we have speakers both on island and off island. There are lots of opportunities for extracurricular work with Jersey Archives or Jersey Heritage that we have good links with. We've got students here at Hampton Court. We'll certainly be offering a London trip, both to hear some lecture speakers and to visit some Tudor sites. Beyond that, we'll have a look as COVID restrictions and other things change about whether we can offer something a little bit more wider as well. So that's the information that we would like to give you about this. Obviously, you may have some further questions. Students are very welcome to ask their teacher in class, myself, Mr. Herbert, find us, ask us questions about what they still need to know. Parents are very welcome to email myself at r.bitmead@jcg.sch.je, and we'll hopefully be able to answer any questions you've got. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a lot of fun choosing which A levels you're eventually going to choose to study. Thank you.